Is a sustainability in business a master's degree something that a university should do? Well, not only did this university do it, but they're doing it incredibly well, perhaps the best in all of the United States. Gifford Pinchot from the Bainbridge Graduate Institute tonight, right here on Rainmakers TV. Gifford, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here.
I actually should refer to you as Mr. Pinchot because I have to get into this before we get into anything else. You have a very famous grandfather.
It's true.
He was, was he the founder of the National Forest Service?
Yes, he was the first chief of the Forest Service.
What kind of influence did that have on you growing up?
Well, I was kind of sheep-dipped in environmentalism as a child, and so I grew up thinking that that's what you do in life. You do something to make the world a better place. He was also a great advocate of social justice. So when he was governor of Pennsylvania, my grandmother was marching in the picket lines, and my father was threatened because my grandfather considered that shooting the union workers was treason. I mean, was murder, and that was not taken well by the coal and iron interests in Pennsylvania. So, which they thought they really had the right to shoot the union workers.
So you grew up in it, and we will get to the Bainbridge Graduate Institute, but I want to talk about this whole concept of intrapreneurship. And that's with an I, by the way, and particularly your most famous book about not selling out in the corporation. Is that accurate?
Well, intrapreneuring is about the idea that people behave like entrepreneurs inside large organizations. And it turns out that, excuse me, you don't really get any innovation in large organizations unless someone takes on that role. So we studied hundreds of case histories, and there's always a courageous champion of a new idea. Now, that could be any kind of an idea, I suppose, but when people are given freedom, they begin living closer to their values. And when they live closer to their values, they begin doing the right thing. And so we found that in many cases, the entrepreneurs that we were coaching and training in large organizations were way ahead of their management in thinking about some of the issues which are now popular today, including sustainability and the whole environmental issues.
When you wrote this first book, though, about intrapreneuring, this was back in the 1980s. It was a different economic climate, and perhaps people had thought differently of jobs. Is it still applicable in the same way today?
Well, I find myself going to Bahrain in a couple of weeks to talk to an association of entrepreneurs there. I'm waiting on the 14th for a reply from a major corporation on a very large entrepreneuring project. So what's happening is that entrepreneuring goes in waves. What you get is a period of cost cutting, and then entrepreneuring becomes less interesting because all people are doing is laying people off and so forth. And then they get to the point where they say, well, we've cut about everything that we can cut, and it would be nice if we had some new revenue. And that's when entrepreneuring comes back. And right now we're in one of those upticks where I'm getting more and more phone calls, and I've been doing nothing to market entrepreneuring, but people are calling and saying, can you come and help us to be more innovative? Because ultimately, if you look at what's going on in the advanced nations, if it's routine, you can outsource it. If it's routine and you don't need to outsource it, maybe you can have a computer do it. So the only thing that really is left for people to do here is to care for other people and respond to their needs and to innovate. And innovate has to be a very large part of that. And you can't really get effective innovation in large organizations without entrepreneurs.
In companies like Google and Apple and Microsoft, although some people felt like that Microsoft lost its innovation edge but is gaining it back, those companies I can see because they're high-tech companies, but are there other types of companies where innovation is a premium and is sought after?
My clients in the past have included the Canadian National Railroad, DuPont, sure, IBM, Apple, Hewlett-Packard, and so forth, but lots of companies that are in businesses that you might not think where innovation is the key. At one point, the Ford Motor Company was a third of our business.
Something I have to ask about, there was a lot of innovation in financial services over the past 3 or 4 years, not all of that particularly good. Is there a way that innovation can go too far or go unchecked, or need it be checked?
I think that there's no question that business in general needs an ethical framework. The framework which it's being taught in business schools, and one of the main reasons why we started the Bainbridge Graduate Institute was because we traced back some of the behaviors we saw to things which people were trained in, namely that it was immoral to do anything for the environment or the community or the future if it took a penny away from shareholders. Now, business had become the dominant institution of our time. When I was a kid, nuns ran hospitals. Now big companies do. When I was a kid, idiosyncratic families owned newspapers. Now big corporations do, and so forth. So we see one institution taking over more and more, and if the leaders of our society are trained to be immoral, that strikes me as a really bad way to go about designing a society. And so I think whether you're an entrepreneur or you're a finance manager or whatever you are in an organization, yes, you have to have some ethical restraint if the world is going to turn out to be a good place. We are whole human beings, not just financial automatons.
Whose job is it to set the standards, to set the morals?
I think that comes to everybody. Obviously, it helps if the senior leader in an organization is doing that. And you can see some organizations like, say, Interface Carpet, where a very strong leader set a very high moral tone, and it worked out very well for the company and also for the environment and the communities around that company. But it's also true that everybody is doing that all the time. Every time two people have an interaction, they're setting the mood of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And so I think everyone really has a role to play.
You're talking, and some people may be listening to you and they say, wow, he sounds like a giant social worker or a giant environmentalist, but you run a business school.
That's true. And I've run businesses. I've made 100-to-1 return for our shareholders in a startup that in the Silicon Valley. So this is really about business. It turns out, let me give you an example just in that company. Now just because it was the right thing to do, we bought green power. We had dogs in the office. We had a no perfume rule because there were people associated with the business who were chemically sensitive and so forth. We even had gay and lesbian spousal benefits. So we're going along, everything is going great, and our lead engineer, Microsoft, comes up and offers him $250,000 a year and a pile of options, and he's 26 years old.
Wow.
I'm paying him 80. This is a bit of a problem for the company, because if he had gone with Microsoft, we would have gone bankrupt. He had created the only product that was making any money for us at that time, and his reputation was what was causing people to do business with us instead of other people. I raised him to 90 and he decided to stay. Why? He said, I like working for this company more than I would like working for Microsoft. I like the culture here. As a result, we made 100-to-1 return for our shareholders as opposed to bankruptcy. Now, to me, that's good business. Mm-hmm. It's good business to do things that attract people. And the higher talent people have, the more likely it is that they believe deep in their hearts that they have enough talent to make a living without selling out. And those are the people that you want working for you. And I think that's probably the strongest reason for doing the right thing in business, is that it attracts the right kind of people. If you teach people that they can cut corners and do whatever they want to make a buck, well, they're not only going to cut corners for your benefit with the customers, they're also going to cut corners for their benefit with you. And you'll find that they have their hand in the till, or they are making decisions which make them look good and make everyone else look bad. And you have that kind of company, which many of us have observed, those environments where everybody is at each other's throats. That's not a good way to do business, and it doesn't make money.
We're talking with Gifford Pinchot, who is the co-founder of the Bainbridge Graduate Institute. Be sure to go to the website. We have it up on the screen. Very, very interesting place, and it is grounded in many of the things that Mr. Pinchot is talking about. In your first book, you talk about, in Intrapreneuring, you talk about the principles of cost-effective innovation. The first thing is bet on people, not just on ideas. And it sounds like that's just what you just talked about.
Yes, absolutely, and I'll explain why that is. When you're doing an innovation, nothing ever turns out according to plan. I mean, nobody is smart enough, actually, if you're doing something really new, to figure out exactly what's going to happen. So the traditional tools of management don't work very well. The traditional tools, taken down to their simplicity, is have them write a business plan and then hold their feet to the fire to achieve exactly what they said. But if what's going to happen is they're going to discover that they were wrong and have to turn right, and then go that way a little bit and have to turn left, you have to ask, what are you betting on? If you bet on the business plan, it's a little bit like betting on a sandcastle built below the high tide line. You know it's going to be washed away. What's the point? Whereas if you bet on the team of people who built it, and they were good artists or good business people, as this might be, they'll figure out how to make it work even though they didn't get it quite right to begin with. And so a much higher percentage of the actual predictive value when you're looking at something which is innovative is in who wants to do it, what is their relationship with this idea, why do they really care about this, what have they done in the past, and so forth. And if you ask venture capitalists about this, they say, I'd rather have a Class A entrepreneur with a Class B idea than a Class A idea with a Class B entrepreneur. Who wants to do it is more important than what it is they want to do. And I've watched venture capitalists, and this is definitely true. In my youth, I brought Alan Patrikoff, who's a venture capitalist who manages $1 billion fund in New York. I bought him a wonderful plan for putting up windmills along the hills in California. And I had checked it all out. The windmills were right. I had checked them with Arthur D. Little. This was like a terrific idea. The wind blew like crazy, and the tax things were in the right place, and so forth. And we came in at 4:30, and he said, that's very interesting, Gifford, and sent us home. And he said, come in at 8:30 in the morning. So we walked in, and he said, Gifford, will you come to my office alone? Leaving the entrepreneurs sitting in the, I was just the introducer, leaving them sitting in the waiting room. He said to me, Gifford, do you know who these people are? And I said, well, no, not really. And he said, well, let me tell you. And he told me the complete business history of all 4 of the members of the founding team. And he said, these are not the kind of people we invest in. And when you come back next time, please have done your homework better. And what he was illustrating was, here's a man who's a money manager, but for him, it was all about the people. Because that's how you actually make money, and that's how you end up with $1 billion fund, because you bet on people, not ideas.
Is that what you teach at the Bainbridge Graduate Institute?
Yes.
You have taught entrepreneurship and sustainability at Yale, Harvard, MIT, University of Colorado, and many other universities here in Washington State and outside. 2 other principles of cost-effective innovation is don't filter out the truth and live with your customers. This don't filtering out the truth part, we've just been through here actually around the world with the financial services meltdown. We've been through a lot where it seemed that the truth has been kept very closely to the vest by some people. Is there a way for that to be avoided without government intervention?
Well, good leadership would avoid it, wouldn't it? I mean, if you think about it, think back to what I was saying about nothing ever turns out according to plan when you're doing something really new and innovative. One of the key skills is the ability to recognize when you're about to run into a wall. If you're dishonest with other people, the chances are that you're dishonest with yourself, and you lie to yourself about the situation you find yourself in. I'm sure you've seen examples of this where people honestly believe that this is going to work when it's really obvious to everybody around them that they are running smack into a wall, right? Well, no entrepreneur who cannot see the truth about and accept feedback and welcome feedback. In fact, entrepreneurs are hungry for feedback. They're trying to pull in more information about what works and what doesn't work in the world. And if you don't have that honest appreciation of what's going on there, then you're going to get into deep trouble in a rapidly changing world, which is what we live in now. I mean, everybody is basically pushed back into an entrepreneurial role with the fact that the world will not be the same 3 years from now that it is today. So
Why is that?
Why is that? I think there's so many reasons why that's true. Part of it is the speed of technology. Part of it is the fact that the balance of power is shifting in the world from, the United States is not the center of the universe anymore. There are other countries which are growing at 10% and changing the dynamics, taking away, business is changing, outsourcing has been taking place. And probably it's also true that the climate is changing, and that's going to make changes. But it doesn't really matter what the changes are. It's just true that the world is changing more rapidly than it has in the past. I'm in the educational field. Education is about to be completely disrupted and turned on its head because it turns out that we can educate people more cheaply using distance learning than we could, and using e-learning textbooks and things which contain a lot more information and a lot more accessible to wander around inside the information rather than reading it in a linear path, that changes everything. And it's just in time, because our society is in a very limited condition right now. We used to be the land of opportunity in the United States, and we still have the entrepreneurial spirit that would make that seem plausible. But what's happened is that the cost of education has risen so high that a person who is not upper middle class to begin with can't afford to get a master's degree unless they're absolutely brilliant and hardworking, right? I mean, the ordinary citizen who, is not a total automaton of learning isn't going to get a full ride scholarship through all of that.
Yeah.
And the debt that you would accumulate doing that if your parents can't afford to help you is enormous. So right now, if you're born in the bottom 20% in the United States, your chances of getting into the top 40%, which means the chances of getting into a middle-class existence, since the bottom is getting bigger and bigger, is about 17%. In Sweden, it's 40%. Now, what's the difference? Why is Sweden the land of opportunity and the United States not? The answer is that they provide education to their citizens. And because they provide education to their citizens, someone who starts at the bottom, if they study hard and so forth, will be taken through school and will get to go as far as their intellect and hard work will take them, and they can work their way up into the upper reaches of society.
We're talking with Gifford Pinchot, who is the co-founder of the Bainbridge Graduate Institute. Be sure to go to the website, and you're going to learn an awful lot. I have this absolutely brilliant question that's here in my notes, and having listened to you, I find out that the question's not so brilliant after all. I was supposed to ask it, what's different about the Bainbridge Graduate Institute and other business schools, but I think I need to change that and ask it this way. What's the same?
Well, what's the same is that we teach the basics of business. We teach marketing, operations, finance, strategy,
Those things.
management, leadership, those things which you would teach. Now, maybe we teach a little more leadership and management than most schools, because we believe those are actually some of the most important subjects you learn. No matter what you do, you're going to be managing people and leading people later on in life. Whereas,
Including living with your customers.
yeah. But what's different is that we bring the environment and environmental responsibility and social responsibility, every one of those courses. So we teach finance and the triple bottom line, meaning that you're measuring not just your financial impact, but your impact on society and your impact on the environment. We teach sustainable operations, so that you're looking at how you apply the Toyota production system and lean manufacturing. How do you apply those so that they're actually also, in addition to saving you money and reducing your inventory and doing all those sorts of good things that business people like to talk about, they're also saving resources, because the enemy is waste. If you think about what sustainability is, a lot of it is, let's not waste things anymore. Let's use things for their highest purpose. Let's use things well. Then we'll have enough to go around. And that is at the essence of everything we're teaching. And it's good business, right? It's good business to save money.
Is it good business to do what you suggested in Entrepreneuring in Action, which is it's the handbook for business innovation? How to succeed as an entrepreneur, come to work each day willing to be fired. Is that good business?
So that is a result of empirical research that I did. So I asked successful entrepreneurs, I said, why do you think you are successful? And their first answer is, well, I had a great team, and I didn't really do it. And that illustrates a basic principle of leadership, which is it's not about me. It's really about the larger group, and great leaders know that it's not about them. It's really about the group and what the group is doing. But when you push through that, the next thing which they said is, well, I guess what's different about me is that I came to work each day willing to be fired. And therefore, I had the courage to do the right thing. I didn't keep turning because, somebody looked at me the wrong way and, I got afraid and I'm going to back off on that and so forth. Instead, I knew what needed to be done. I have an inner compass that is telling me what has to happen here, and I continue and persist, and I make it happen. And it's an interesting fact of human nature that coming to work willing to be fired means that you're not afraid. being not afraid means that people think you must have a friend in high places. If you're afraid, people want to come and kick you and push you down, right? Because they realize that you're the victim and that that's okay for them to go after you. But if you're unafraid, they get out of your way to a surprising extent. So this is actually extremely good business to figure out how to be unafraid. When I talked to them about, well, why aren't you afraid? They said, look, there's two possibilities here. I'm an innovator. I like to do new things. It's possible that I have a job in a company that wants me to be an innovator, in which case, if I just go ahead and be an innovator, everything is going to be fine. It's possible I work in a company that doesn't want me to be an innovator, that wants to block me, that wants to stop me. In that case, I already have a bad job. So I have nothing to lose. And that attitude, I think, is part of what makes people successful. It's not that entrepreneurs take such high risks, but that they are not afraid. That allows them to see clearly when they are taking some risk.
There's an old adage, if you can measure it, you can fund it. How can you put what you just talked on a spreadsheet? Or can you?
I'm not sure that you can, and I'm not sure that everything can be measured. I think that character is something which you can recognize. I think people know character when they see it, hopefully. If they're good managers, they do, because it's one of the most important characteristics that a manager has, is they can figure out, who is this person, what's motivating them, what can I trust them for, what can't I trust them for, and so forth. And I think that there's a certain intuition that's responsible for that. I think that we have right brains as well as left brains, and that it turns out that the successful entrepreneur, or the successful intrapreneur for that reason, is what Ned Herman at GE used to call a double dominant. They are right-brained and left-brained. And that combination of right and left brain, there's situations where only intuition will guide you, so you use that. There's situations where failing to calculate the answer would be a really dumb thing to do. And so they have to be able to do both.
In today's world, I got to ask you this: what I'm hearing you talking about is hard to put on a spreadsheet. It seems like caring about people and actually really truly understanding people. That's not the kind of thing that I'm used to hearing about in a business course. How do you stand up there and lecture that?
I don't know. I don't find difficulty doing it. And I don't find difficulty doing it in major corporations either. And I don't find difficulty in getting very good ratings when I do. So I think this is a message that people want to hear. I think it's a message that, that matters. I think that if you think about, as we become a more service-oriented business and people are interacting directly with customers, those are the moments of truth. And in the moment of truth, did that employee that you sent out there to deal with that hotel guest who's checking into the hotel, did they care about giving you a good experience? Did they care about the situation you found yourself? Did they care about the fact that you were tired and wet? Or did they not? And if they did not, you are much less likely to return to that hotel. So the next issue is, how as a manager do you get people to sit out there and care? Well, one of the real keys is that you care for the people. They will follow your lead in this in this matter. So then it turns out that to create an organization that cares about people is the only way that you can build a truly high-performing organization.
Is business the primary driver of social change?
It is true that I think that, that's a hard question, because I think government has a role, I think business has a role, I think nonprofits have a role. I think that everybody is driving social change. The reason that we chose to focus on business at the Bainbridge Graduate Institute is that we felt, A, that there was no way the changes our society need to make could be made unless business was enthusiastically on board in making them. That the amount of creativity that it takes to build a sustainable society in the face of the changes which are taking place is too much creativity to be done reluctantly. We need business to do that. And it also seemed to us that other people were doing a pretty good job of those other things. There were fantastic nonprofit leaders who were beating on business to try and get business to do the right thing, right? Yeah. There were government people working on government policies trying to get business to do the right thing. But it seemed to us that what we really needed was business to want to do the right thing. And to
Does business want to do the right thing? But I have even a more fundamental thing, more fundamental question. who is business? Is business Exxon and Shell and UBS, or is business the street down the corner?
Yeah. Of course.
So, but can you lump them both in the same? I mean, some people say that Walmart drives small shops out of business, and maybe it does. At the same point in time, there are others who say that Walmart is a very responsible business. I don't know the answer there.
Well, I think that's what life is all about, is that it's complicated. I mean, Walmart is driving small companies out of business, and Walmart is leading the charge on teaching our economy to be more sustainable. When Walmart says you're going to do this and we care about these things and we want all our suppliers to have a sustainability plan, that has an effect on the way people do business, and they develop that consciousness inside their organizations. At the same time, it's probably not a good thing that we're losing all the little ma and pa shops that used to characterize the United States, and I think we're a very nice part of what we are. So Walmart, like almost everything else, is good and bad.
So students at the Bainbridge Graduate Institute are, especially students who may come from another country, are you teaching them to be Sam Walton, or are you teaching them to be the mom and pop shop?
So our students are both. So far, none of them have formed a company as large as Walmart, and of course, in 10 years, I guess even Sam Walton couldn't do that. But we have a basic conflict that goes on in our school, because there are those people who work for big companies and are going to turn the ship 1 degree in the right direction, and there's people who start incredibly pure businesses, and they say, well, our way is the right way, and we say it's all good work. So I have a graduate who saved 1 million tons of carbon last year. That's 2 billion pounds of carbon. That's repeatable year after year. In other words, she could go away now, and that would keep happening every year. And she'll do the same again next year, and the same again next year. So that's a huge effect to be having. On the other hand, we have a graduate who was a third-generation Skagit Valley dairy farmer. He was sad that family farms were going out of business. He didn't like the fact that the manure lagoons that are coming out of, when you process the manure in a large dairy farm, it goes into a little lake, and it goes down into the groundwater and poisons the wells of people around there. And methane bubbles up into the atmosphere and causes global warming. And the stream overflows, and it goes in and takes out the shellfish. And the neighbors move in because of the suburbanization, and they complain about the smell. And the dairy farms were really having trouble, and they were going out of business because of EPA fines, among other things. And so he said, well, maybe I can solve all those problems in one move. And so he raised $4 million, and he built a acre-sized methane digester. The manure goes in there, it makes methane gas, it goes into a big internal combustion engine, it generates enough power for 700 homes. And he returns to the farmers a dry bedding, which saves them $100,000 a year, and a soil amendment, which they can spread on their fields, which is dilute enough that it doesn't go down into the groundwater. Wow. And it's profitable.
That's fantastic.
Now, which is better? Which is better?
They're both good. And I have 4 hours worth of questions, and we're out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being with us. That was Gifford Pinchot from the Bainbridge Graduate Institute. It's up on the screen. You got to go there. We'll see you next time right here on Rainmakers TV.
BGI.edu. Thanks.